you're the lawyer and you are responsible. Whether it's what you've always done or anything else, at the end of the day, you are the one who has to take care of your client's interests.
Hello, and welcome to the Attorney Post. Here's our host, Justin West.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with attorneys at the top of their game to help you navigate the ins and outs of the various legal fields and jurisdictions. Because, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I'm joined with Mark Hodgson of the eponymous law firm that bears his name up in Spokane, Washington. Mark, how are you doing, Mark?
I'm great. How are you, James?
I am doing good as well. I am doing good. Let's jump over here and take a look at your law firm. For anyone looking, that's HodgsonLawOffices.com. We'll have a link, as always, in the description below. You can also reach them toll free at 866-756-5661. Again, that will also be in the description down below. Before we get started, as always, we're going to read from our sponsors. Our first sponsor today is National ERC. You may have noticed that the world just went through a pandemic, and many businesses were forced to shut down or reduce their hours and had supply chain issues and interruptions and ultimately suffered from reduced revenue in 2020 and 2021. What you may not know is that Congress recently passed the CARES Act, which allocated $400 billion in stimulus funds for small businesses that never needs to be paid back. This is not a loan like the PPP or Paycheck Protection Program. This is essentially free money for your business that can be spent in whatever way you think makes the most sense. Right now, nationalerc.org is helping small businesses get the maximum amount of money that they can, and you can calculate and see how much you could get back by visiting nationalerc.org. The average small business that they work with gets back over $200,000 to invest in their business that never needs to be paid back. The calculator is completely free, and there's never any fee unless they secure funding for you. Again, that's nationalerc.org. Our second sponsor today is Groove Funnels. If you love spending $5,000 to build a new website and you love paying monthly hosting fees of $100 or more for a platform that allows you to sell products to your potential clients and customers, then by all means, keep doing whatever it is you're doing. But if you're like me, you hate that stuff. And that's why I personally recommend Groove Pages, the all-new, all-in-one website funnel sales platform from internet marketing legend Mike Filsaime. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove today to sign up for free and build a free website completely free at no cost. Really, truly, seriously, at no cost. There's no cost, and you can build, I believe, actually up to 3 fully functioning websites at theattorneypost.com/groove. They have a huge list of apps that the platform allow you to do everything from running webinars to doing a sales funnel, website, and blog, as well as, of course, monitoring your own affiliate programs. Almost anything you can imagine. It's kind of a Swiss Army knife when it comes to all of the different aspects of things you can do online. Again, visit theattorneypost.com/groove today to sign up for free. No credit card is required. All right, and we're going to jump back over here to your website. So Mark, thank you very much for joining me today. Mark is a passionate advocate for his clients. He runs a family law firm up there in Spokane, and he provides highly personalized and responsive representation to individuals facing family law matters. He has over 20 years of experience practicing law, and he's built a reputation for his integrity, trustworthiness, and dedication to his clients. He graduated with honors from Gonzaga in 2002, 2003. And he's been practicing since I believe he was barred in 2003. I might be wrong on that, but feel free to fill me in here in a minute.
Yeah, we're real close to the 20. We're closing in on the 20. We're at 19.
Okay, 19. Well, that's about where I am with my marriage too. So.
Yeah, all your math.
He was admitted to practice in the state of Washington. He is, again, committed to providing compassionate, high-quality legal representation for his clients and encourages anyone in need of a strong, caring advocate to contact his law office in Spokane. So question number 1, Mark, before we begin with anything else, is what did I miss?
Well, lots. No, I mean, I think what we have here and there was no way for you to do is really talk about how great our firm is. Because when I started, it was all about me. It was me, Mark Hodgson. I didn't want to work for anybody else. So I hung my own shingle, like not the smartest idea, to be honest with you, as a new attorney. Hooked up with some great people. Now I've got my own firm, and what your description described me, and that's great and everything. And yeah, I think I've become a good lawyer over the years. I've become very good over the years, and I think I have some respect in the community, a very good amount. However, the people around me are what are spectacular. We have 2 people that work for me as lawyers. They're both law review We've got Julie Harrington. She works for me. She's a former tennis pro. She has 31 years of experience.
Wow.
She is absolutely one of our senior attorneys here. She's amazing. We have Ben Rivera. He's actually our office administrator. He's pretty just jack of all trades. And then we've got two paralegals, Rosalind Weller, as well as Carol Ann Eichholtz, who are probably two of the best paralegals in Spokane. So the idea of this, a lot of times my name's on the door and everything, that makes me responsible for sure. But boy, what did you miss? You missed all the talent that surrounds me, because the parts are way bigger than me.
Awesome. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And I can respect that. You're only as good as the people backing you up. And it sounds like you think very, very highly of your team. And I think that probably reflects very highly on their skill level and everything else. So I guess I'm sorry that I missed that. I don't know that I could have known otherwise, but I'm glad that you filled us in. So let me ask you this, Mark. If I was stuck in an elevator with you and I said, what do you do? What would you tell me? Who tell me about your firm. Tell me your ideal clients. Who finds you? How do they find you? What kind of services do you provide?
Well, there's a book by Simon Sinek, I think it is. It's Start With Why. I think we've all heard about it. Maybe it's kind of, and to go that's a bit cliche, but one of the things is to get the differences in the whats and the whys. So what we do is help people. So whether we were driving ambulances, or whether we were working in a hospital, or whether we were running a grocery store, what we do is help people. So if you say, well, what do you think it is you do? We help people. We work in family law, which means people come to us at the worst possible time in their lives. Worst. Like I've lost people in my family, and I don't want to compare grief or loss or anything. A divorce and the breaking up of your family, when it involves children, can be one of the most traumatic experiences of your life. People also go through some of the worst behaviors in their lives. And that's who comes to us. On their worst day, they come to us and we help them. So that's the what. I would say there's a lot of the whys. There's a lot of different reasons, and that's personal for everybody. But I think everybody here is committed to the idea that that's simply what we do. And the reason we grew the firm is because the way we help people, which is incredibly effective and client-centered, is also able to help more people with more people in the firm. You're going to see all different kinds of lawyers out there. Here, people come in and they feel that people care about their case. They actually get things done and they have effective results. So under those circumstances, we can take your worst day. I can't make it your best day, but I might be able to make it better. And that's what we do.
All right. It was a long elevator ride. But no, that's a good answer. And I think, knowing what you do is definitely important, but knowing the why behind it is important. And I think you're absolutely right. I've seen a lot of different research. I remember even as a high schooler going through psychology classes, and they talk about the big grief moments in your life. Obviously the death of a parent, death of a spouse, death of a child, but outside of those deaths, which are permanent, a divorce really is about the same thing. And sometimes it involves losing your kids, or definitely losing a spouse in a real sense. So absolutely, that is a good answer, and I appreciate that.
One of the ways we look at it is, and I say I like to think this is, we have like you get married, right? Mm-hmm. And it has nothing to do with the law. Getting married has nothing to do with the law. You make children, nothing to do with the law. You did it because you love this woman or you love this man and you want to make children, or and I don't mean to get into gender labels or either ways, just simply the person who's there decided to have a baby. And even same-sex couples, they'll decide to have a baby and whatever. That has nothing to do with the law. Thank God it has nothing to do with the law now. You have every right to do that. What happens though is people break up, and it has everything to do with the law and nothing to do with the love of your child, nothing to do with the former love of your spouse, nothing to do with the betrayal you might feel, or just the sadness of your life ending. So, there's really two sides to it. And the law, and I wish more people knew this, really only deals with the business end. Mm-hmm. And so that's what's so unique about family law is the emotion-driven responses and decisions that clients make that we try to steer them through during this tough time. So that's kind of the distinction I always ask my clients to make is, all right, this is the business end of it. We need to figure out how we're going to share your children. We need to figure out how to pay child support. We need to figure out how we're going to divide assets fairly, And the other thing I tell them is if you're here at my firm, and this is for all of us, If you're here because you want to rake the other side over the coals or make them pay, go somewhere else. That's not what we want. We want to zealous advocacy. We will fight for your rights and your children, but we're not going to do anything unethical, and we're not going to treat the other side with anything other than dignity.
Gotcha. No, I mean, I would expect nothing less, in fact. And I do
Well,
know.
not on a tangent there, James. Sorry about that.
No, that's totally fine. And you said, you meet people at their worst sometimes. And I think that definitely is the case. People are, stress will do that to anybody, right? And of course, it's something that's been probably boiling over for, weeks or months or even years by the time it kind of all comes to a head and they come to you. So that's no, it makes a lot of sense. So let me ask you this, Mark, what got you into law? Were you the type of kid that just knew that you always wanted to be an attorney? Were you the kid that, when everyone else was playing G.I. Joe or whatever, you were playing, I'm trying to think Matlock or, some sort of an attorney? Or did you kind of stumble upon this as just kind of a calling? And then out of all the branches of the law, how did you get into family law?
That's a multifaceted question. Number one, I had no interest in anything, I'm going to say forensic or law-like in high school. I wanted to be a cyclist. I thought that was really good. Problem was I didn't have the talent to be a good cyclist. So I raced and I traveled and I did all that. And I had a debate teacher, and I took a class, like a speech class, my junior year of high school. And she said, Mark, would you be on the debate team? I said, no, absolutely not. That's stupid. And so then she called my mom, and my mom said, well, you're not doing anything else you could do it as a class back then. So you didn't need, you'd literally get grades and everything. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And I was really good at it. I did really, really well. I only did it 1 year, my senior year of high school, but I won a lot of trophies in that year. I mean, we had a great program. We traveled to tournaments and everything. I made it to semifinals at state in dramatic interpretation. I won the GSL for their little tournament. There were some other, people that did. It was kind of a different tournament. I wouldn't say I was the best in the GSL, but maybe on that day I was. It was a big one. And I got some really big accolades, and I kind of got very confident in public speaking. So that was something I took into undergrad. Going into undergrad, I began working with children. I kind of thought that I'd be a teacher or something like that. But I did get a history degree, and I thought, well, if I ever want to go to law school, this will be my fallback. So if I want to go to law school, a history degree would probably be pretty good. By the way, for all of your listeners who are getting history degrees, that's about all it's good for. So if you really love history and you don't want to be a lawyer, do something else. Just to let you know, because I have a bachelor's in history and a minor in communications. So really, there you go. Be a lawyer or don't eat.
Now, here's an important question. What's your favorite historical period? Because you're talking to someone who also has degrees in philosophy and history, which are very marketable skills. If you want to ask the deep questions in life, like paper or plastic, or you want fries with that. Hence, I had to start a marketing company and the podcast and everything else that I do as well. So, but I was a medievalist by trade, though I find myself in my older years becoming a lot more interested in American history. What was your forte in history?
I really like the World War II era from 1939 to 1945. And here's why, though. Here's why. Like right now, with what's going on in the world, I think when it's more real that these big conflicts are a little more salient than they used to be. World War II seems so far removed. Yeah. And now you see people dying on such a massive scale in Ukraine that I don't care who you are, it's scary. However, what I would ask the world to look at, what I thought was the most amazing, it was a conflict that when it started, the most powerful army on earth was the German army. And I want to say 80% of its artillery and goods was pulled by horses. By 1945, we had computers, jet engines. We had, I believe, antibiotics were spawned from World War II, just out of necessity. We had radar. We had everything, rockets, ballistic missiles. We had nuclear power in 6 years. And to me, and also I would posit this, and I may be wrong, and someone may take issue with me because I'm only a bachelor's degree. I would say the civil rights movement may have taken seed there because of the migration throughout the country of different ethnic groups and getting jobs, as well as them fighting for our country. I would say that the women in the workplace was solidified through World War II. Just those two things. I mean, so if you look at everything from women's rights, civil rights, to space exploration and nuclear power and plastics, 6 years.
It was a crazy 6 years.
Yeah, that's it. Like, and I hope I don't alienate anybody. I think in some ways you could argue it's bigger than Christ. And the reason I say that, not to put anything religious, but this affected more people. Even if you took Christianity as a whole, it doesn't affect the sheer number of people throughout the world that affected. You know, if you take both theaters into account. So it's big, and it was very interesting. And the movement out of tragedy really always kind of resonated with me. But I you know, it's when you see the massive loss of life right now, it's spooky.
Gotcha.
My own opinion.
No, that's interesting. And again, you know, different people, different approaches to history and whatnot. Again, I was a medievalist by trade.
Black Death. I mean, that's a biggie. Percentage wise, that's big.
Absolutely huge. Absolutely huge. And it's funny too, because you said you're in debate and forensics, and so was I back in high school. Honestly, that's where I learned to write, because we had to do and it was a class for us too, and it was shelling briefs all day long. So argument, source, argument, source, argument, source. I learned to write papers that way, like to this day. And I was terrible at it. I didn't understand, because I think our topic my first year was like resolved that the United States should substantially change their foreign policy towards the People's Republic of China, which when you're like 16 years old, it's like, what does this even mean? Like, why do I care about this? But
it also sounds like you're probably doing a form of cross-examination, cross-ex debate. Is that right?
We for debate, we did cross-ex, we did the full-on debate. And then we also did forensics. I did extemporaneous DIHI, duets and all sorts of stuff. My eldest daughter has followed in my footsteps and is doing forensics as well. So I just found it fascinating. So, I love the Lincoln Douglas debates.
Yeah, Lincoln Douglas was fun. That was my style of debate. And then I did impromptu and dramatic interpretation in high school. Then I did dramatic and humorous interpretation reading in college. So I did a couple of those.
My college, I didn't ever think about it. I guess I always thought of debate just being a high school event, but my college never offered debate as a thing, but I wish they would have, because I think it's a very valuable skill. And anyone that excels in debate was definitely going to be able to excel in a legal career. It doesn't surprise me at all, because it really does. You have to be able to think quick, think on your feet, understand how to communicate. And I think that's important. So anyway, I'm sorry to take us down reminiscent, but I find it fascinating.
Glory days, right? Glory days.
The glory days, reliving the good old days.
When I got shiny plastic plaques, great.
The most meaningful things in life, right? The best things in life are free. We're going to keep quoting the Beatles here, right? Bigger than Jesus. So let me ask you this. One of my sponsors I just read from was, National ERC. And obviously we as a culture just got through going through a pandemic that affected the globe. Arguably probably still is, more in some places than others. And I noticed a lot of different attorneys had a lot of different changes to their practices. Some of them were almost completely unaffected. Some of them were drastically affected. So let me ask you, up in Spokane, how did the pandemic, Mark, how did it affect you? How did it affect your firm? How did it affect your practice of law and the way you interface with clients, et cetera?
Very little. As far as the nuts and bolts, I would say we began, we had about 2 weeks where I sent all of my staff home. The first thing I did when I kind of saw it coming down the pike was I bought 2 really cheap laptops that could get into our server so we could work remotely if need be. And that's probably something that was, if you look at that, that's almost kind of going back to the World War II thing of like how remote work was in its infancy, a year and a half ago? And now it's the norm. I mean, remote working and the ability to do anything remote is getting more refined every day and more acceptable. So, but really, it affects me very little because of proximity and the type of law I did. So, yes, I had a couple rough months, but it did allow me to move into a new building and begun growing with staff. What affected me more and was more profound was actually my own health. And following COVID, we were kind of coming back and getting on our feet, and I ended up having to get a triple bypass.
Oh, wow.
And that took me, and I was a solo practitioner at the time, with 3 staff members. And it took me out of the game for a good month and a half. I mean, I came back after 3 weeks, but I wasn't really practicing that much law. And so I would say, to get back to the pandemic, I think it was very interesting to see society shut down. For my business, in some ways, I think it was a missed opportunity. Because I think looking back, if I knew what I knew now, I would have waited 3 weeks or 4 weeks and then started a huge ad campaign and done everything, because everybody was stuck with their spouse inside a room for 2 months. If you had a crack in your marriage, it became a fracture.
Mhm.
And we became pretty busy, and I think we're still dealing with those after effects. And the other thing we're also dealing with in family law a lot is really people drink a lot more now.
Yeah.
I think they do because of the pandemic. I mean, people sat at home and drank for a couple months. And that if you had any sort of problem with alcohol, like a little problem, it got way worse when you didn't have to get up in the morning. So those types of things, I think we see more of. We're seeing a little bit different in the laws as far as domestic violence. We're seeing less of we're seeing a movement in Washington State that moved away from pure physical harm down to proving like coercion and control as part of the statute that passed last year, which I think is a good thing, but it can be frustrating if you're on the other side of it. But so I think we're making, so to answer your question, did it affect my practice? Yes, dramatically. We had a couple bad revenue months, which is difficult for small business, very, very difficult, even with the PPP. Then how people want to work, and then the dynamic of the workforce. You went from a position when I got out of law school, if you got a paid attorney job, you were a stud. Right now, good luck hiring an associate. Like they're in demand, and finding someone who's good and alive, good luck. I mean, you really have to you're starting to get to a point in the labor market for even people, white collar jobs, that you really got to take a chance in some cases. And that's true. And getting down to support staff, if someone doesn't have a passion to be in a law office, they're not going to be a good employee for you. You can't pay them enough. They'll just go somewhere else.
Yeah.
There's been a lot. I'd say the labor market's probably a big change too, and remote work. And frankly, I think remote work is silly. I've made it work with one employee, and I think it's oftentimes disruptive. And like the gal we have remoting is fantastic. It's working out great. She's the exception. As a rule, remote work doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
Just
it's a good thing. Did a lot of the courtrooms go to virtual or zooming in, or do you still do that? Is that going to be the norm moving forward? I was talking to somebody who had a family law practice in California, and he said when he started, I think I'm trying to remember, he was located just in like the San Francisco area. And by the end of the pandemic, he had clients all over California because he no longer needed to be there physically for any of it. And like all of California's, like every single law, every single court was like zoom in, everything. And so he's like, yeah, all of a sudden it opened up my practice to take on clients anywhere I wanted to take on in the state, which is kind of neat. Are you still, I'm guessing mostly just still in the Spokane area? Did it affect the way that you work with the law when it comes to the pandemic and everything?
In some ways, it certainly broadened my mind to doing that. For me, I have plenty of work in Spokane for right now for the size of the firm that I have. However, what I run into problems with is if I can appear by Zoom, that's all well and good. However, in Washington State, each county is different. So we practice in about 4 or 5 counties that we're comfortable doing, but there's 32, 33 counties in Washington State, and each county has a different set of rules. So that's the peril of going with an attorney from Spokane, and you're on the west side of the state in Seattle, 300 miles away. And I can appear by Zoom, and that's no problem, but I need to know your rules. I don't know your judges. I don't know I don't know anything. So yeah, you have to be really careful when you do that. The being able to appear by Zoom is something that we may pursue as it becomes more acceptable. But I mean, what counties should look to doing is creating a homogenous set of statewide rules. It's silly that counties are these sort of fiefdoms that get to make up their own way of practicing. If everybody could get on the same page, I'd practice everywhere, but they're not. And so I think that's something that, clients should know too, is you better have a lawyer that knows that and isn't just taking your money because they want $5,000 and they're going to go and everything should be fine. I practiced in probably 20 to 25 of the counties in Washington. I practiced in most of them just because I picked up work when I was new. However, you got to be really careful. And it's, if you miss it, like you can have all your exhibits in a trial, just you don't get to enter. I mean, and you'll thought you did everything right and you won't know till day of trial. And the other attorneys didn't get their little gotcha moment. So I'd say that's one of the things. But yeah, remote is great for the administrative hearings, like so pretrials, things like that don't require argument. You don't have to leave. It saves the client money. But I'm also really close to the courthouse, so I prefer to argue most of my hearings in person. I just think it's more effective.
That's fair.
So that's long answer, but I think remote's great, and I think it could be great and even better for like transactional firms. So if you're doing wills and trusts, I don't know why you wouldn't do that. You just have to figure out the filing systems in every county and just go, because you can meet with clients virtually. It's the same thing.
Yep. That's what we're doing right now.
So, yeah.
100%. Okay. So let's talk more about your firm for a few minutes here. One of my favorite questions to ask my guests on this podcast is to tell us a little bit about some of your biggest successes and failures. And I always like to start with the failures. And I know in 20 years of practice, you've probably hit a few brick walls. You probably had things that didn't go your way. Maybe it was a hearing, or you're arguing something and everything fell apart, or a client, in the middle of testimonies, sworn in, says the wrong thing and it's like, oh, everything fell apart. What would you say is one or two of your biggest failures that you've encountered? But what, of course, did you learn from them? Because, of course, anytime you learn from a failure, it's really not a failure. It's just a slow burn win, right? So can you tell the listeners about once or twice when you've had a failure and what you learned from it and how you carry that forward to take care of your clients?
Well, I have to be a little careful because I don't want to breach any confidentiality here. But we did have one case. I think for failures wise, I'll give you two. We had one case where we had like a Midwest jurisdiction, and the kid was here, and my client was from the Midwest, and it was a father, and we went to hearing on the temporary orders, and the mother wanted the kid to stay here in Washington. The father wanted the kid to be in the Midwest, and we won the initial hearing, no problem. Kid went to the Midwest, and that was great. And I mean, our client was so relieved, and he really was a great parent, and it was just going to be amazing. And then they did what's called a revision up to the judge, and we did the same thing we'd always done for years, and we had prepared for the temporary orders the way we'd always done for years. And there was one piece of paperwork that we didn't submit that nobody else really was ever really beefed with it. And the judge used our failure to submit a piece of paperwork as a basis to bring the kid back from the Midwest. So within 2 weeks, we came in, got the kid back to the Midwest, and lost the kid based upon one thing that the judge said. Now, in hindsight, I believe that the judge used that as a reason to justify his decision. However, that didn't really negate the fact that we didn't submit that piece of paperwork. And, it was one of those things where I think what I took away from it, and I mean, the staff, myself, we were gutted. I mean, it was brutal. Even the client wasn't necessarily mad. He was just so beyond disappointed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a permanent thing. And we actually went to trial in front of the same judge, and things got better, but nothing ever. What I learned, I guess, one, and I guess sometimes I forget these lessons to a point, is that you're the lawyer and you are responsible. Whether it's what you've always done or anything else, at the end of the day, you are the one who has to take care of your client's interests. And That's really your job. And it's not, and I know we do these things, and some days you're tired, and maybe your client annoyed you, or you annoyed your client, or you're arguing with somebody, you're arguing with the other side. You still have a job to do. And I guess that's one of the things that I'm really glad that I have the people around me too, is they take it seriously too. So yeah, I guess, yeah, things are deadly serious, and you don't know they are until they are. I guess that's the practice of law, and probably anything. It's like sometimes you're just going to get got. And we lose too. I mean, there's other things to know. Like, you don't win every hearing, you don't win every case. You lose some too, and that isn't necessarily fault or anything. Sometimes you don't have the case, but in those cases where you could have taken the extra step, and it came back to bite you after you won, that was brutal. That was probably one of the worst.
Absolutely. Now, without mentioning the state, and I can edit that out in post if we need.
Yes,
did the kid move? So he moved out and then had to come back. So like literally, he had packed his stuff and left. Wow, that's heart wrenching.
Young kid, grade school kid.
Okay, so let's put the shoe on the other foot then. I'm sure in your practice of law, and I know you said you had another example. If you want to go into the other,
oh no, we can. Just one. No.
Only one failure. I'm sure you've had cases that are just glowing successes as well, and those are sometimes the ones that everyone wants to hear about. Those are the big wins, the feather in the cap, the thing you're most proud of. So, can you let our listeners know about a couple of times, once or twice, when everything came up roses, when things turned out better than you expected, or you were afraid it was going to go horribly wrong, and then you pull out a win, or something along those lines. What's one of your biggest successes you're most proud of?
I think one of the things that, I'm going to do sort of a blending of cases, because we've had some pretty good successes over the years. Quite frankly, I remember the losses way better than I remember the successes. Just
That's life.
I guess. Yeah.
They sting.
Yeah. But I think a couple of the things I really enjoy doing is we've had a few cases, probably 3 in the last calendar year, where we had, in this case, they were women. They don't always have to be women, but in these cases, they were women that had been abused by an intimate partner. And these women would be so beaten down and kowtowed for years. I mean, and beaten down mostly emotionally. I mean, there's physical violence has its limits, and you'll hurt people, you'll go to jail, those types of things. So if it progresses criminally, it sort of takes care of itself. However, there's oftentimes an emotional component, and there's, I can tell you six women off the top of my head, and we had to take these cases, and they're saying, well, I want a shared parenting plan with their abuser, and this happens quite frequently. And we've actually been able to take those cases, and one of the best things we can do is when you get to trial. And oftentimes, you start prepping your client starts crying in your office. You're thinking, there's no way I can get this person through an hour of testimony, to even get our case out. And they're like, because they know their abuser is going to be in the courtroom. And what's happened in many of these cases is, and it's really the dynamic, and I don't know if it's necessarily my practice, but these women were able to speak out and when asked questions about the abuse they endured, and they were able to tell the court exactly what had happened. And you could watch a transformation on the stand from someone who was a victim to someone who's standing up. And I mean, it's big. I mean, it is, that's probably those are the, you talk about the Perry Mason moments.
Yeah.
Those, and then if you get the result, which in these cases we did, where you get the parenting plan you want, and they get these people who, they've got other issues too. Nothing happens in a vacuum. It's not like they were never victims or anything else, but someone who victimized someone for years, told them that, I'm going to take the kids, I'm going to take the stuff, you're nothing, and watch this person become empowered. It's something. It's really something. And I think that's probably what I'd like to see for all of our clients, regardless of the issues, is sometimes you come into a family law thing feeling like the victim of circumstance, and you leave empowered and better for it. And that's probably the goal in every case. It does not happen in every case. It just doesn't. But it can, and it does frequently. And that's why we do the job.
Gotcha. It's a good answer. I like that. So let me ask you this: a lot of websites, when you see them online for law firms, et cetera, they'll always have like your FAQs, your frequently asked questions. And I'm sure there's lots of questions that people answer or ask you over and over again. You have to give an answer to. But I found that for a lot of attorneys, what they probably should have on their website is an SAQ, or should ask questions. What's one of the questions that maybe people should be asking when they are coming in, or should be thinking about before they even come in and talk with you, that you wish more people would think about, or would have the foresight to kind of bear in mind? Does that make sense?
Mhm. Is my lawyer a therapist? No. One of the things is I do, that's probably a little jaded, but no, the difference between the emotional side, is there an emotional side and a legal side to a divorce or child custody or anything else? To separate emotions, should I separate my emotions from a very emotional issue? The answer is yes. You don't want your surgeon crying while he's doing heart surgery. You don't want, anger is a good example. Like, we run into infidelity all the time, and it's divorce, right? So, oftentimes there's anger around that. And anger is a pretty good emotion if someone's coming after your kid. Anger is a pretty good emotion if you want to change something, you see something unfair. That's great. That's why we have it.
Yeah.
Anger is 100% useless in court. It is 100% useless in a courtroom. And check your emotions at the door if you can. And if you can't, then let's look at that and get someone like a therapist who can help you. So I think that those are the two things of like, how should I take care of myself during a dissolution? Because one, get some therapy, get into a good space. If you don't exercise, start exercising or doing something like that. Do something positive for yourself. Take care of yourself. Do not sit around and drink. Maybe, I'm not saying don't ever go out and have a drink or anything. I'm saying just it is not an excuse to go down the rabbit hole. It is time for you to better yourself and to get on the right track. And your lawyer cannot do that for you. If you are in a good space and you're doing the right thing, you will get a good result or a better result in your case. If you are doing self-destructive behaviors, your lawyer cannot fix that. And self-destructive behaviors include anger and treating the other party with disrespect and lashing out when you're angry, especially via text. The other one is, should I say angry things in text? No. Should I really be active on social media during my dissolution? No. If you want to think about yourself under a microscope, you are. So, but again, if your Facebook page shows you, taking up, the Washington State Chess Championship, and you've always wanted to do that, and and your root diet that's really changed your life, then that's great. But sitting there and venting about your ex on Facebook is entirely unhelpful to you.
Good advice.
I go home and see my kid every night. So, it does, at the end of the day, venting on Facebook does nothing to me.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. And I'd encourage most people to step off the social media at least a little bit. I've heard when he was still alive, Steve Jobs wouldn't let his kids have an iPhone. Mark Zuckerberg won't let his children be on Facebook. They all see that, especially at young ages, social media is just almost poisonous in a lot of ways. It doesn't mean that there's not good that comes from it, to be sure. It doesn't mean that people can't interact with it. But I do think we have the tendency to just to view it as the new public square. And of course, it's a very permanent public square, and anything you say can and could be very much so used against you in a court of law. So, well,
in law, we use it to market. We use it. So we'd be hypocrites to say no social media, no nothing. I'm going, yeah. But if you really think your privacy setting is going to keep other people out of your dirt that you're posting on Facebook,
I got a bridge to sell.
Yeah, the other thing is let's say, you're ordered, not to use drugs and alcohol. And do you really think if you go to the big party that nobody there is on Facebook?
Yep. Take a picture of you.
And they're all taking pictures and there's cameras everywhere. So yeah, I think really the best thing you might want to be able to look at is inside, and how can you make yourself the best person during a very difficult process. And that doesn't mean do nothing bad and don't eat cake. It means, take care of yourself first. It's the good analogy would be, you're on a plane, the airbags drop down. They tell you to put your own airbag on before you do your kids.
Yep.
Because if you're dead, you can't help your kid. So, that's the same thing with divorce. Put your mask on, then do what you got to do, but make sure that mask is on.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So let me ask you this. I'm sure you've probably had cases where like your client's objectives, what they're really wanting, maybe would conflict with what you would judge to be the best interest of them or of their children. Does that happen? And if that does happen, what do you do?
100% that happens and we quit. I mean, if I think it's not ethical, it's not unethical to continue on in your client's best interest. There's nothing unethical in that. I'm not here to disparage other lawyers that truly believe that. But if we were at a morning meeting and if what we were doing was honestly going to hurt a child, we'd quit. We've done it. We don't do that. So if we're thinking that it's going to hurt a child or not be in the best interest of the child, we really don't do that. Now, with that being said, are we always right? Not always. I don't know that we can be. You know what I mean? So I don't want to sound like we're this high and moralistic firm that would never take on someone with a bad position. No, we have people that are in horrible positions that have behaved terribly. We take those people on as clients. However, if they put us on a track that we can't ethically, or I guess go home and sleep at night, then no, we just don't do it. And we tell the client that, and that doesn't mean that, we're passing judgment necessarily on them. It's just, we have to pass judgment on ourselves first. So, but we also try to educate before we get to that point. So if we go, like one of the conversations I like to have is just go, look, we like to win. We don't like losing. If we do what you're doing and what you're asking me to do, I'm going to lose. So I like to win. And I think this is what your win looks like. And if you don't like that, then it probably can't help you. But, that's what we do. But I mean, there's a lot of education that you do have to do. And I think you also have to do some hand-holding and be a little bit patient with people. The understanding of where they're at, you got to meet them where they're at first. And oftentimes people are in crisis when they come into our office. So you got to meet people in crisis, educate them, hope that their behavior either changes or they do what's right. And then you need to educate them again. And if you really can't get through, then you just need to stop representing them. But generally, we're pretty good about educating. The other thing is we don't always go with one approach. Some people, I know this is going to be crazy, don't like me as well as other attorneys in our office. They would prefer to have a female attorney, which we can do. They would prefer to have, just with how it is, or maybe the issues. Maybe it's somebody who endured some sort of, gender-based abuse. They want a female attorney. Great, we can do that. Maybe they don't like me. Maybe they don't think I'm funny. Sad. But those types of things, happen all the time. And that's the good part, is that we can recognize that and go, well, why don't you try her? Why don't you try this point of view? We still all talk about the case. We still all run it, but sometimes a new pair of eyes is exactly what the case needs. And we've talented enough people that we're able to do that. I'm not the one all be all as far as legal knowledge in this firm. I'm not. I'm a piece. And that's the best part of this firm, is I'm a piece. There's more knowledge here than me.
Yeah. There's my philosophy degree showing through. That's that Socratic wisdom, right? Knowing what you don't know.
Starting to. By the time I retire, maybe I'll know more.
There you go. So I'm sure, obviously, when someone comes to you with a custody issue, there's going to be short-term and long-term financial implications of a custody battle involving children. How do you help your clients to be prepared for that? Like, how do you help them understand all the ramifications that are going to come into what they're going to be experiencing as they're undergoing this custody battle, both in the short term, and of course, I know that these things can be revisited year after year after year sometimes.
Well, short term, the way we try to look at it is a lot of times you really have to know the client. And if the client's calm and reasonable and the other side's calm and reasonable, and they're just two people who don't want to be together anymore, the first goal there is not to create conflict where it doesn't exist, right? Because it's an oppositional system. That's the dirty secret about our courts, right? It's not collaborative. And give you my little collaborative spiel later, but it's not a collaborative effort. It's not necessarily towards a win-win solution. It's a win-lose proposition when you get to litigation. So if you have two people that can go win-win and two people that can get along, one of the first things I'll do is pick up the phone and call the opposing counsel and say, are we good? And a lot of times that's the other thing our firm does well is we have relationships with other lawyers. We get along with people. We don't hate people. That really is handy for our clients.
Yeah.
So yeah, we fight like cats and dogs. I mean, ask around, but I mean, we are incredibly fun to deal with. We're incredibly nice. We don't belittle people. We don't insult people. We just simply advocate for our clients. So in that case, with reasonable people on both sides, which oftentimes happens, don't create conflict. The second thing is if your client's reasonable, the other side is not, what I like to do is get into court as soon as possible under what's temporary orders and give them a taste of court if I think I have the high ground in the case. Oftentimes giving a smart person who's being unreasonable a taste of court and they don't like the outcome will then drive to a final settlement. So sometimes you can get to a very quick resolution of the case by kind of punching the bully in the nose. If people are just fighting to fight, you got to decide whether the case is worth it and which side really has the high ground and what's the best you can do for your client. Those are the worst. So yeah, if you have the case and you have the high ground, great. Sometimes your client might have gotten beat up in a different venue and you've got to battle all the way back. I've had cases where we start off with supervised visits at the beginning and come all the way around to having full custody at the end. It took 1.5 years, but if you're on the right side and you're doing the right things, it does work sometimes. So the first thing is recognizing who your client is, what their goals are, and how you can help achieve those goals. And you also should probably know if the goals are reasonable or not. If somebody says, well, I want custody of these kids and I've been overseas for 5 years, so I should just get them. No, that's not reasonable. That's not realistic. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So assessing your client is incredibly important.
Gotcha. That makes
not very
sense.
Sexy, but I mean,
no, but it's very, very practical, and it's the real world experience that people need to know going into it. People need to have that knowledge and have an attorney that has that awareness. I mean, that's crucial. So
we get blinded sometimes. I mean, we don't always read our client correctly. It's true.
I mean, nobody bats 1,000, maybe unless your first swing might be a home run, but eventually it'll average out. So, well, Mark, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. And here in a minute, I'm going to probably wrap things up a little bit, ask you our closing 2 questions. Those questions are going to be, A, if I give you my magic pen here that can strike laws from the books, edit or add new laws, what law would you add? It could be a big national sweeping law that has ramifications for everyone in the country, even in the world, if you really want to think big, or it can be that stupid little pedantic law that makes you fill out forms in triplicate 8 times a week that just drives you nuts. So in a minute, I'm going to give you my pen and you get to make that change. I'm also going to ask you if we were to go back in time and meet a young Mark Hodgson, fresh out of graduate school, out of law school, and you could give him some advice other than, of course, buy Bitcoin, trust me, hold it to 60K. If you could give yourself some advice, and of course, by extension, a fledgling law student who's looking at practicing on their own, what advice would you give and why? Before we do that, though, I'm going to jump over and take another look at your website. Again, this is HodgsonLawOffices.com. Link, as always, in the description down below. And the phone number is 866-756-5661. Now, if people want to talk with you, Mark, do you guys do like a consultation, initial? I'm guessing they can pick up the phone and call you for free and at least explain their situation and come in. What does the process look like for someone who wants to potentially interview you or maybe even become a client?
Initially, they can simply call the office or send an email. We find that calling the office is generally the best way to go. Setting up a time to talk with me or one of the attorneys here. They will be screened for financial ability to pay a private attorney. A lot of times people call and go, I want my free consultation. It isn't exactly what we do. We are not a library. So call. There's going to be some screening questions. One, whether we have jurisdiction to hear your case, whether it's a case we even practice in, and whether or not you can afford to hire our firm. There's all different kinds of cases. So I'm not going to run down a menu of our prices right now.
That's fine.
So, but yeah, a good example is my billable rate is $325 an hour. That's billable hours. It doesn't mean I sit there for 8 hours a day on your case and bill the same thing 8 hours a day on your case. However, lawyers are very expensive. And if you're going to go down the road of a private attorney, which in family law, that's your only option, then you need to be ready to make it financially, a priority. So, but you can call our office. We have Sarah. She's at the front desk. I forgot to tell everybody about her. She's actually our resident horse expert. She's amazing. She's actually done rodeos and stuff. She's really cool. She's our front desk person. She's able to schedule a potential new client consultation with myself, maybe Brianna, maybe Mary. Sometimes our senior attorney, Julie, depending on who the client is and what their needs are. And we'll spend some time with you. And I think a lot of times what you'll hear me say is, what's going on? Where are we at? What's going on in your life? Why are you here? And generally, I can get a pretty good thumbnail sketch in about 15 to 20 minutes as to what your needs are and how we can help, or if we can. And you can ask my staff. There's a lot of cases we just can't help on. So we'll know right away, and at least you'll know. But there's a lot of cases we can help on. And, if you're going through a dissolution, child custody, or anything else, we'd love to help you out.
There you go. Well, as always, again, link in the description below. Also, that phone number is down there. If you're in the Spokane area, if you need a family law, a practice, family attorney, it sounds like Mark's law firm would be a great law firm to get started with. So I'd encourage you, if you find yourself needing those services, I hope it's the funny thing with the family law. I hope nobody ever needs your services, right? Because we don't want that to happen, but it's a reality of the world we live in. I know that some people listening, will need your services. So link, as always, in the description below. We're going to jump over really quickly, read from that last sponsor. Our final sponsor is Rank with News. If there is a guaranteed way to get your law firm or your business featured in major national publications like Yahoo News, Forbes, Bloomberg, and others, and to see those articles rank locally, sometimes in under 8 hours for major competitive keywords that people were looking for, what else would you need to know? Rank with News is simply the most powerful way to hit page 1 in under 2 weeks safely, organically, and permanently. This is guaranteed SEO, or search engine optimization, and it's on steroids, ranking quickly and sticking. Visit rankwithnews.com to learn more, or book a time to speak with a specialist about featuring your firm or business in major national 8-figure traffic sites to help you launch yourself to page 1 of Google in a matter of hours and dominate your local market space. Get media exposure, rank higher in Google, build credibility, and win more customers and clients with rankwithnews.com. All righty. So here is your website. One more time. Again, I encourage anyone to take a look there. So final 2 questions. Let's go back in time first. And we see a young Mark fresh out of law school. And he runs into you. You run into yourself, and it doesn't cause some weird space-time continuum thing that implodes all of reality. What advice would you give yourself fresh out of law school?
I think be less ego-driven. I think when we get out of law school, we have this idea that we need to be the best lawyer that ever was. And I think some of the best advice that was ever given to me was by George Critchlow, he was interim dean at Gonzaga and one of my professors. He said, you're never going to win enough cases. You're never going to make enough money. You're never really going to be to the point where everything's just fine because you did 400 wins, or you did 300 trials. And so I think one of the things I'd say is don't be as ego-driven. Pay attention to the mundane that you hate, and like things like, office organization and management and things like that, because that really is difficult to fix later. And finally, that when you hire people to be around you, they will produce, if they're good people, far more than you put in. So the idea of overhead is not necessarily true with good employees. Good employees make you better. And so if you get away from you needing to be the best, you needing to be the smartest, and instead hire the smartest and the best people around you, and you don't really care that it's a competition, that's what I would tell young Mark to do, is to start finding smart people right away. Instead of thinking that you've got to be the smartest kid and you can teach yourself to be better.
Yeah.
Everybody's, when you go to law school, you learn real quick that everybody's smart. It's a room full of smart people. And you go to the courthouse, it's rooms and rooms full of smart people. Most lawyers are not dumb. Some are, but most are not. And they all want to be the best too. And they all want to be, the big kid on the block. And when you get over that a little bit and you start trying to just help people, then I think you do better work.
Gotcha. That's good advice.
When you break
And
it down, it's easier. When it's
it's
not
very,
about you, it's better.
it's very human advice too. I appreciate that. That sounds like insight from somebody who's got a degree in the humanities. So,
Or 20 years of hard knocks.
and 20 years plus 20 years of hard knocks. Okay, magic pen time. This is my magic pen. Don't ask me where I got it. I actually got it from a local coffee shop in Wichita, Kansas, apparently, but it's magical. And with this pen, you can strike laws from the books, you can edit laws that are currently on the books, or you can add a new law that needs to be there. So if I give you my pen, you can make one change, Mark. What change are you going to make and why?
2 changes. 1,
Ooh, you're pushing it.
absolutely put very first in the revised code of Washington. I believe it's a law out of Grace Harbor that says it is illegal to shoot at a whale from a state highway. I think that's important. And I think everybody needs to follow that law and be aware of it immediately. I don't know. I've always wondered, what was the problem? I mean, like where they all had to meet and said, you know what, people are just shooting these whales from the highway. I mean, it just seems, I've never seen anything like that. Or come up, what are you shooting at? Whales? I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I think that one would go right up top. I think it's very important. Like to know, I want the minutes to the meeting. So that's one. And then the other one I think I would do, this is bad, but I've seen it in so many different areas of law, is I would hold people accountable for perjury. And I would absolutely, if you get caught lying in court, I would like to see real consequences for people lying. You lose credibility. People do that all the time. Realistically, the judge is being asked to be a lie detector in so many different cases. So I would like to see that and make it to where you actually had a forum where truth does still matter. And I still think it's a good system where truth is enforced. Probably a big thing. I mean, you can ask all of my clients when they're asked, but what's my number one rule for testifying? Tell the truth. And the reason I do that is because I can fix bad information. Like I can fix meth use, like go get tested, go, figure out what's wrong, quit using meth. And then we'll go down the road. However, if you say I don't use meth and I argue for you saying he doesn't use meth, and then everybody says, well, what's the needle in your arm, sir? And he's like, well, that's meth. If we have people lying and there's no consequences, it cheapens the system dramatically in all areas. I don't care if you're civil litigation or anywhere else. It would be nice to see people held accountable. And it would be nice if that carried over to the media outlets as well. And I don't even care which one.
You know what, you're preaching to the choir on this one, and I think that there's something to be said for your word being your bond. And I mean, there's obviously going to be some ramifications when you're known as a liar, regardless. But yeah, I think that there should be. I mean, if it's an accidental, I said the wrong thing, that's one thing. But if it's malicious lying, yeah, I think there should be ramifications as well. So I agree 100%. Well, Mark, thank you very much for taking time to meet with me today, sharing some of your wisdom with me and my listeners. I do always like to give my guests the final word. Do you have any last thoughts or anything, any final words of wisdom you'd like to leave our listeners with, other than, don't shoot at the whales from the highway?
Well, I mean, let's start there. But I think beyond that, the legal system is flawed, deeply flawed. People get hurt by it every day and it gets things wrong. However, I've been in this system for 20 years. I've looked at systems in other countries and I've looked at other things. In the American legal system and the bar and the lawyers that work in it really are some of the best in the world. And they really are people that try. And lawyers get a bad rap sometimes because they're advocates. And sometimes they don't always advocate for the people you want them to advocate for. However, we have a system where everybody gets a voice.
Yeah.
And lawyers can give you a very powerful voice. And if they're ethical lawyers, it's an amazing system indeed. So if you are represented by the best lawyer that is ethical, me or otherwise, you're going to be in good hands in this system. And that's something to consider. And it's something, if you need help, whether it's with criminal law, family law, personal injury, and you can find the best ethical lawyer, you're going to have a voice. And so don't hesitate. Get your voice.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I might even lead that. I might make that our lead in to the episode. It was Good soundbite. I liked it. So, well, Mark, thank you very much for talking with me today. This has been, for those of you listening, of course, the Attorney Post. I've been chatting with Mark Hodgson of the eponymous law firm that bears his name. HodgsonLawOffices.com is the website. Link, as always, in the description down below. As always, this podcast does not constitute legal advice. And if you have a legal issue, you should always seek the advice of a competent attorney in your area who focuses on the matter you need help with. Obviously, if you live in Spokane and you have a family law issue, again, having had this conversation with Mark, I think his law firm might be a really great resource for you, and I would highly encourage you guys to reach out to his firm. Link in the description, phone call in the description down below as well. Because as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. So always work with an attorney who can take care of your best interests. This is Justin West. You've been listening to the Attorney Post. If you're watching this on YouTube, we always appreciate a like, a subscribe, and a share. If you're listening to this on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Audible, whatever podcast repository out there, we appreciate a like, a subscribe, a share, whatever it is they allow you to do. And until next time, thank you guys for listening. Bye-bye.